Hey guys, Diane here with the Green-Eyed Monster Review, and today I'm going to be ranking every serial killer book I've ever read. All the ones I could remember anyways. So hit that like and subscribe button and we'll get into it. Okay, so to my serial killer horror list. These are all the serial killer books that I've read. I did have a few that when I was going through my Goodreads, I didn't remember them. I couldn't tell you anything about them. So I was like, well, I'll just skip that because I guess technically speaking, I haven't read them. They've been erased. But starting very low, I'm going to start from the bottom to the top. So coming in at number 13 is None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney. And this book was atrocious. This book was horrible, horrendous, awful. I hate this book so much. So this is about two teenagers who they're tasked with finding a serial killer that one of this 18-year-olds was actually a victim of the serial killer. She survived, obviously, and the other one, I think the serial killer had killed his dad or something like that. Neither one of them have any experience in literally like anything other than I think they graduated high school. But they are the only two people that can solve this case. This book was so stupid. It was supposed to be a mix between The Silence of the Lambs and Mindhunter. So I was going in thinking, okay, this is going to be good. I don't like YA, and this is a top reason because it's so dumb that I just can't wrap my mind around it. I hate to be so negative about someone's book that they've written, and this gets good. This gets like 4 stars on Goodreads, so I'm really questioning Goodreads at this point too. But no, this book was atrocious. I just hated it so much. So this might be my most hated book of all time. So moving on to number 12 is The Snowman by Joe Nesbo. And this is Detective Harry Hole. That is his name. And I didn't really find it that funny until my husband was like, what is his name? And then when I said it, I was like, yeah, I guess that is kind of ridiculous. But this is about a serial killer. He's basically preying on mothers that he thinks aren't being good mothers. And then after brutally murdering these women, he goes outside in their yard and he builds a very nice looking snowman. So can you understand how did anything go wrong with this book? But this was kind of basic. It wasn't very good. I don't remember a whole lot about it. It was just kind of run of the mill. Okay, so number 11, Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. And I had a really hard time trying to figure out where I wanted to put this book on the list just because the writing was really good. The story itself was so addictive that I really couldn't put it down even if I wanted to. It's like something that you don't really want to know. You don't want to hear all these details, but you are so curious that the curiosity is just eating away at you. So that's why I say that I don't necessarily I'm not really recommending this book because it is so dark. And it really will take you just to the depths of just it's just so bad. But this is about two homosexual serial killers. They end up finding each other and they end up just relishing in the grotesque way that they enjoy to murder people. And it's such a weird feeling because when they find each other, you're almost happy for them in some sick, sadistic way. So that's another reason why I'm like, I don't know if I can really necessarily recommend this to somebody, but if that's in your wheelhouse, that's where to find it. And then coming in at number 10, we have The Chalkman by C.J. Tudor. And this book was there's 2 separate timelines, if I remember correctly. This book is about a group of kids, and they kind of communicate. They have like this little game where they put little chalkmen in certain places or whatever, and one of them gets murdered, or they end up finding a dead body, and then their lives are just basically turned upside down. And then as they grow older, they're come to find out that no one had actually drawn that chalkman, that it was an outside person. So they're just kind of trying to figure out who's doing the Chalkman, and all these murders are happening. This book was pretty good. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I remember being slightly disappointed in the ending, but I couldn't even tell you what it was. But it wasn't bad. It's probably more of middle of the road. It wasn't super twisty-turny. But, you know, it was okay. And at number 9, we have The Midnight Man. And The Midnight Man, this was actually on my Halloween recommendations, which I will link. And this one was pretty good. I really did enjoy this. This happens on Halloween night. Some girls are in this mansion and one of them ends up dying. And so you're trying to figure out who killed this girl. And there's other murderers happening, so you're just trying to find the Midnight Man. But this one was almost supernatural too. You're trying to figure out, is it a supernatural entity type of thing? Almost like the Candyman trope. Not necessarily trope, but the Candyman, you know, you're calling it forth and something comes and eats you or whatever. But this book was pretty good. It was very fast paced. You're really involved in the story. So that one was a good one. Like I said, I recommended it, so I really did enjoy that. And then number 8, we have The Whisper Man by Alex North, another book that I had recommended. I think this was on my beginners, horror for beginners. And this is just a seamless book. It's about a serial killer who's whispering through the window, kind of luring people out. If someone's whispering through my window, 100% I'm not going to go out there. I'm going to either get my dogs or my husband or something to protect myself. I'm not going to go outside and try and figure out who's whispering into me. So I don't really know how that worked out. I haven't read this book in a while, but I did like it. And it's by Alex North, and I've read a few of his books, and his books are really easy to follow. They're really also kind of addictive to where you're just kind of wanting to just blow through it in like one sitting. And then we have, let's see, number 6. Okay. I think I messed up my order. That's okay. That's okay. We're fine. And then we have The Angel of Darkness by Caleb Carr. And this is actually the second in the series. It's following a doctor, Dr. Laszlo. And this is a group of there's a few detectives but there's also some psychologists. And they are investigating a case of a woman who they think has been murdering children. And this book was a little slow for me. It wasn't as good as The Alienist, but it was pretty good. I would say there's some really dark material in this. It is really well written, but it's a really thick book. So it's going to be more of an investment if you're looking for something like this to read. But it is good. The payoff is good, and the characters do feel really really intense. They feel like they're really trying to help the people. They're really trying to get to the bottom of it. So that's a good one. The Birdman by Mo Hader. This is a little higher on my list than I actually expected it to be. When I first read this, I was slightly disappointed because I was kind of expecting something else. But the more I kind of thought about it, the more I was like, actually, you know, I really did kind of enjoy that. But this is about a serial killer who's kind of turning their victims into some sort of, not necessarily art of some sort, but he's kind of communicating with the police through the victims. And this was a really grotesque book. This was creative, to say the least. But you're following the detective, and he's going through some things in his life that doesn't connect to the serial killer, but in some ways he's had dealings with this in his personal life. So that was a really good one. It was a little too tidy of an ending. Sometimes I don't really want to have everything, you know, finished with the bow on top, everything explained, because I don't feel like that feels super realistic. And with police procedural books, you want a little realism, but not too much. And then we have The Outsider by Stephen King. I loved this book. The show's amazing. It's on HBO. So this is about it starts out with one murder, and you think you know who did it, but then it's turned on its head, and you're just totally confused. You don't know who did it. And then another murder happens, and they're connecting them. But this book was really good. This is you're trying to go between whether or not this is a supernatural killer or a man. So that's one of my favorites, when you're really trying to go between the supernatural aspect, or is this just the plain run-of-the-mill, not plain run-of-the-mill, but like a serial killer that's almost more disturbing because it really is just a person, you know, just an everyday person. And then we have The Butterfly Girl by Renee Dunfield. And I just read this yesterday. I read it in 2 days, actually. listen to it on Audible. But this book, Renee Dunfield is so talented in the way that she writes. This is actually probably my least favorite of her books, but this book was phenomenal. When I say my least favorite, this is a top favorite. Obviously, this is number 3 on my list. But this is about a young girl, and you're kind of following her. She is homeless, but there is a string of murders that's happening where a lot of girls are ending up in the river. And so you're trying to figure out who that killer is, but you're also going through this young girl and seeing the street through her eyes, and you're learning her backstory, how she ended up on the street, and you're also following, she's not a detective, but she is a private investigator. And so she just thinks of different ways of how to solve cases, and she's really good at it. She was actually a victim herself, so she kind of thinks differently than the police would. But this is such a devastating book. It is so sad today. It was like cloudy. I'm like, I've got to like have some caffeine or drink a glass of wine because this book is killing me, literally. And okay, I'm not going to say that because actually that might be a spoiler, and I wouldn't want to spoil anything for you, but this book's phenomenal. You've got to read it. And then we have The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup. I totally slaughtered the name, but that's okay. And there's also a Netflix show, The Chestnut Man, phenomenal. The show is amazing. It's just as good as the book. But this is about a serial killer who is picking off women, and he's living like little chestnut men. So he's kind of also does it a lot better than the Snowman did, but he's communicating with the police through these little objects that he's leaving behind. And this is a devastating book as well. It's very intricate. It's a very delicately woven story, and you're following a lot of different people, but it's not as hard as you would think, because there are multiple kind of storylines that you're following at the same time, trying to keep everyone straight. But it's actually pretty easy, especially on the audiobook like I like. But this book was really good. I think I cried in this book because it was just devastating. There is a lot of abuse in this book, but it's just, I don't want to say worth it, but it's the way it's written is very addictive, and you're so invested in the characters that you are just teetering on the edge the entire time. So number 1, and I'm almost rethinking number 1 now that I've talked about all these other ones, but The Alienist by Caleb Carr. And this book, even hearing the name, The Alienist, I was so captivated even by the title because it sounded so unique, so strange, and something different. But now that I'm like talking about all these other books, I'm like, is this number 1? But this book was so good. And when I was making this list, this is the one that kind of just popped into my head at number 1. So that's what I went with. But this is set in like 1890, and this is about a serial killer who is preying on the sex workers, young boys, sex workers in that just kind of live, I forget what it's called, like the ghetto, basically. But this book is really sad. This is a heart-wrenching book, to say the least. They go in a lot of detail. He's not only just, I mean, obviously murder's bad, but it's not just that. And they go into a lot of detail, and you're really feeling for the situation that these kids are in, the situation that these families are in, to where they're really not getting any help from the police either. And so that's kind of where Laszlo comes in. He's the main protagonist in this book, and he's actually a psychologist, and he's referred to as the alienist. But this book was so good. It's very addictive. You're really teetering on the edge, like with some of these other books as well, but you're really feeling like, I just hope there's not another victim. I hope this kid that I'm meeting right now isn't going to end up like these other ones. And it's just it really is gut-wrenching. This book is phenomenal. Caleb Carr really is a very gifted author, to where it turns into reality almost, because it just feels so real, and it feels very impactful of the story that you're reading. And the show's phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, I forget what network it's on, but you can Google it. It's really good. It's probably one of the best shows that's on here. I don't know. I'm not gonna get into ranking that right now, because even coming up with this list, I was like, but this is what I came up with. So, hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know how you felt about them, and hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.